1957. A kitchen after supper, dishes in soapy water, and the smell of Pall Malls in the curtains. A wife swallows a sentence she has rehearsed since breakfast. She will not say it tonight. There was a reason married couples in this country learned to speak in silence. Someone erased the language on purpose, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly what was never supposed to leave the kitchen. In post-war America, some words could end a marriage before lunch. Words about money, about loneliness, about what happened behind a locked bedroom door that no minister or mother would ever acknowledge. This video starts where none of our other 30 have, with the financial trap that made silence not a choice, but a survival requirement. Then moves to the unspoken deal every husband and wife lived by without ever saying it aloud, before reaching the centerpiece. The secret coping methods women invented for problems too forbidden for any doctor, neighbor, or beauty parlor confidant to hear. Emergencies of daily life handled alone with an ingenuity that would rival any $200 an hour therapist today. From there, it covers how women survive marriages that were not just unhappy, but dangerous, the 20 tricks wives use to hide affairs with the precision of military intelligence, and finally the vanished strategies couples built together to keep their marriages alive when the world gave them no honest language for what was breaking. Before 1974, many financial institutions in America routinely refused to let a married woman open a checking account or apply for a credit card in her own name without her husband's signature. She could not sign a lease. The average housewife operated on a weekly allowance of $15 to $25 for groceries and children's shoes. Every dollar was visible. Legal historians have documented that while married women gained basic property rights by the early 20th century, multiple states still restricted their ability to independently manage joint property, obtain loans, or control businesses without their husband's consent through the late 1960s. Banks and landlords maintained this architecture deliberately. A wife with her own money was a wife who could leave. That financial cage is the reason behind every compromise and every hidden strategy you are about to watch. None of what follows makes sense until you understand that silence was never a personality trait. It was an economic condition. A living room in 1953 with the television glowing on low and two people sitting close enough to touch but choosing not to. The creak of a rocking chair on a screened porch at dusk. The click of a compact mirror opening inside a department store restroom where a woman checks her expression before walking back to the car. The weight of a conversation that happened entirely through a casserole left on the counter instead of the dining table. Every married couple in post-war America operated inside a system of unspoken agreements and emotional workarounds that no advice column ever printed and no sermon ever named. Husbands knew things they could not say to their wives. Wives knew things they could not say to anyone. And together they built an invisible language made entirely of gestures and silences and small rituals that held marriages together when the spoken word would have torn them apart. What you are about to watch is 5 different windows into that language. Each one reveals a different face of the same silence. Number 14. He handed over the paycheck. She ran the money. On Friday afternoon, he came home and gave her the entire paycheck. She decided where every dollar went. Not a check for most working families until the late 1950s. Actual cash in a small manila envelope. She sat at the kitchen table after supper with a set of labeled envelopes. Rent, groceries, electric, insurance, gas. She divided it by hand. The Montgomery Ward catalog opened beside her if something was needed for the house. A dime store ledger from Woolworth's, 15 cents, where she recorded every penny in pencil. He did not ask how she spent it. She did not ask permission. Today, 78% of Americans say money is their #1 source of relationship stress. In 1954, it was not a conversation. It was a system. He earned the money. She made it work. And the family that held together on $4,200 a year did so because the woman at that kitchen table could stretch a dollar until it screamed. That was not budgeting. That was architecture. Number 13. She never sat down to eat until everyone else was served. The wife served every plate. She ate last, if she ate at all at the same sitting. Corelle dishes or Melmac in turquoise and pink. A pot roast on a Pyrex platter, carrots and potatoes circling the edge. She filled his plate first, then the children's, then set them down with the good Oneida flatware. She brought the rolls, the butter dish, the glass of milk. Then she stood at the counter for a moment, wiping her hands on her apron. Cotton print from Sears, 89 cents on the bolt. She sat down to a plate that was already cooling. He never noticed. The children never noticed. She never expected them to. She fed her family the way she loved them. First, completely and without waiting to be thanked. That chair sat empty until the world was fed. And she filled it last like it was the most natural thing on earth. Number 12. He never complained about a meal. She never served one she had not tested. He ate what was put in front of him. She made sure it was worth eating. The Betty Crocker Picture Cookbook with the red and white gingham cover, 1950 edition. The tuna noodle casserole with crushed Lay's potato chips on top. The meatloaf with a stripe of Hunt's ketchup baked into a glaze. She tested a new recipe on a Tuesday when nothing was at stake. If it failed, she never made it again. Nobody ever knew it existed. A Jell-O mold with fruit cocktail suspended inside. Del Monte in heavy syrup. He sat down, picked up his fork, and said 2 words, "Smells good." That sentence was the entire review. That sentence was enough. Complaining about the food was complaining about her. So he never did. Cooking something careless was disrespecting his labor. So she never did. The silence at that table was not emptiness. It was mutual respect with its mouth full. Number 11. She kept his secrets from her family. He kept hers from his. What happened inside the marriage did not leave the house. Not to her mother, not to his brother, not to anyone. A fight at 11 o'clock at night. Voices kept low so the children would not hear through the plaster walls. The next morning, Sunday dinner at her mother's house. Her in a fresh dress with her good brooch. Him in a pressed shirt, both of them smiling over a plate of pot roast like nothing had happened. Her mother searching her eyes across the table. Finding nothing. Today, the average person shares personal relationship details with 5 to 7 people outside the marriage. In the 1950s, that number was 0. They did not air grievances because they understood something that has since been forgotten. The moment you let someone else into your marriage, you hand them a chisel and point them at the foundation. They protected each other from the outside world, even when the outside world was family. Especially then. Those first 4 rules governed the ordinary days, the meals, the money, the Monday through Saturday machinery of staying together. But the deeper terms of the deal were about something harder to name. They were about territory. Number 10. The kitchen was hers. The garage was his. Nobody crossed. Each spouse had sovereign domain. She did not rearrange his workbench. He did not reorganize her cabinets. His side. A Craftsman tool chest from Sears, $22 on the installment plan. A pegboard with the outline of every wrench drawn in pencil so he knew if one was missing. A can of 3-in-1 oil. The smell of sawdust and cold concrete. Her side. The Youngstown steel kitchen cabinets, white with chrome handles. The flour canister, the sugar canister, the coffee canister in matching tin. Her spice rack from a S&H Green stamps catalog. Her system for where the canned goods went. He would not have known where to find the nutmeg if his life depended on it. And he never tried. Respect did not always look like conversation. Sometimes it looked like a man who never once opened the drawer where she kept the good scissors. The territory was small, but it was theirs, and they defended it without a word. Number 9. He drove. She did not question the route. When the family went anywhere, he drove, and he chose the road. A 1955 Ford Fairlane or a Chevrolet Bel Air. A Rand McNally Road Atlas in the glove box. No air conditioning. Windows down on the turnpike. The smell of hot vinyl and juicy fruit gum. She sat passenger side with a child on her lap before seatbelt laws existed. He pulled into a Texaco station for gas, 27 cents a gallon, and she took the children to the restroom without being asked. He never asked for directions. She never offered them. If they were lost together. And she had the decency to let him figure it out without an audience. She did not ride in silence because she was powerless. She rode in silence because she understood that a man who cannot steer his own car cannot steer anything. She gave him the wheel, and he never once drove them off a cliff. Number 8. She set the social calendar. He showed up. She decided who they saw, when, and for how long. He put on a clean shirt and went. A wall calendar from the insurance agent hung by a nail next to the kitchen phone. The Petersons for Saturday supper. Bridge club on Thursday. Her sister's birthday on the 15th. Church potluck the last Sunday of the month. She signed them up for her scalloped potatoes every single time. He found out about the plans when she told him to be home by 5:30. He did not argue. He did not negotiate. He put on his good tie, the one she had picked out at J.C. Penney. He stood at the front door with his hat in his hand at 5:25. She managed the social life because she understood that a family without community is a family without a net. He showed up because he understood that the deal meant trusting her judgment on the things she could see better than he could. And she could always see people better than he could. 8 rules deep, and a pattern is already visible. The deal was not about control. It was about jurisdiction. He had his, she had hers. Neither of them had to do everything. Neither of them had to be everything. They were not partners in the way we use that word now. 2 people negotiating every task from scratch every single day. They were specialists, and the household they built ran like a Swiss watch because each of them knew their post and never abandoned it. Number 7. He fixed what broke. She decided when to replace it. If the screen door sagged, he repaired it. If the toaster finally died, she chose the new one. A Saturday afternoon, the bathroom faucet dripping for a week. He pulled out the Craftsman wrench set and shut off the water valve, replaced the washer himself. A 10-cent rubber disc from the hardware store on Elm Street. No plumber, no phone call. His hands black with pipe grease, the faint smell of plumber's putty. But when the Sunbeam Mixmaster burned out after 9 years of service, she went to the Sears catalog, compared 3 models, placed the order with her Christmas club money. He did not ask what it cost. She did not ask for permission. Today, the average American household spends over $12,000 a year on services their grandparents did with their own hands. He kept the house standing. She kept it livable. And the line between the two was drawn so clearly that neither of them ever stepped over it by accident. Number 6. She ironed his shirts without being asked. He noticed without saying so. His shirts were pressed and hanging in the closet every week. He wore them without comment. But he knew. A GE steam iron, $8.95. The ironing board set up in the kitchen or the back bedroom. A sprinkle bottle made from an old Coca-Cola bottle with a cork stopper and a metal sprinkler head. 10 cents at the 5 and dime. The hiss of steam on damp cotton. The starch smell from a can of Niagara starch from the box or glass bottle. She pressed the collar first, then the yoke, then each sleeve, then the body panels. 7 minutes per shirt, 5 shirts a week, 52 weeks a year, 1,820 shirts across a decade. And not once did either of them call it love, but it was. It was love in its most ordinary and permanent form. Repetition without resentment, service without scorekeeping, the kind that does not announce itself because it does not need to. Number 5. He took discipline. She took comfort. When a child needed correcting, the father handled it. When a child needed holding, the mother was already there. A boy caught lying about a broken window. The mother's face tight, her lips pressed shut. Wait until your father gets home. The sound of the Buick pulling into the driveway at 5:15. The father's voice behind the bedroom door. Low, firm, brief. No shouting. A belt across the back of a chair has emphasis, not always used. Then the boy sitting on the edge of his bed, red-faced, the mother appearing with a glass of milk and a hand on the back of his neck. She did not undermine the punishment. She did not override it. She simply arrived afterward the way weather arrives after a storm. They divided the hardest job in the world without discussing it. He was the wall. She was the door. And a child who grew up between them understood something about structure and tenderness that no parenting book has ever improved upon. Those roles, the iron, the discipline, the calendar, the car, they sound rigid from the outside, but the people who lived inside them will tell you something different. The deal was not a cage. It was a floor, and what was built on that floor is what nobody talks about anymore. Number 4. She made the house ready before he came home, every single day. By 5 o'clock, the house was clean, the children were presentable, and she had changed out of her house dress. Toys picked up off the living room rug. The Hoover run over the carpet one last time. The cushions on the Davenport straightened, the floor wax smell still hanging in the air. Clean, slightly sharp. The children's faces wiped, their shirts tucked. And her. The house dress swapped for a blouse and a skirt. A fresh coat of lipstick, Revlon's Love That Red. Her hair combed, not because she had to look beautiful, because when that front door opened, the first thing he saw was supposed to tell him that this house had not fallen apart while he was gone. Today, 32% of American homes are described by their occupants as cluttered or disorganized. In 1955, that was not a possibility. It was a disgrace. She gave him that order every single day. 365 days a year for decades. She was not performing for him. She was keeping a promise. The deal said, you go out and face the world. When you come back, the world you come back to will be standing. She kept that promise until her hands gave out, and some of them kept it even after that. Number 3. He never told her what happened at work. She never asked. He came home, hung up his hat, and sat in his chair. What happened between 8 and 5 stayed there. The lazy boy recliner or the one good armchair by the Philco television set. His shoes off. The evening paper unfolded. The local daily, 5 cents. The smell of newsprint and his aftershave, Aqua Velva or Old Spice, fading by the end of the day. She brought him coffee, or, on a Friday, a Pabst Blue Ribbon from the icebox. She did not ask about the foreman. She did not ask about the layoff rumors. She did not ask why his jaw was tight. She waited. If he wanted to talk, he talked. If he did not, she let the silence do its work. Today, the average American checks their phone 144 times a day. In 1954, a man came home to a quiet room and a woman who knew that quiet was not emptiness. She understood that the man who walked through that door had spent 8 hours carrying something she could not see. The greatest kindness she could offer was not to make him describe the weight. She gave him the chair and the quiet. And most nights, that was enough to put him back together. Number 2. Neither of them said "I love you." They said it other ways. The phrase was almost never spoken. Not at breakfast, not at bedtime, not on the phone. She said it by leaving his lunch pail on the counter at 5:30 in the morning. A sandwich wrapped in waxed paper, an apple, a thermos of coffee. He said it by checking the oil in her car every Saturday without being asked. The hood of the station wagon propped open, a rag hanging from his back pocket. She said it by laying out his church clothes on Sunday morning. He said it by never missing a single one of their daughter's school plays. Sitting in a folding chair in the gymnasium in his work pants, because he came straight from the plant. Nobody said the words. The words were unnecessary. The evidence was everywhere. They belonged to a generation that believed love was not a feeling you reported. It was a thing you proved. Daily. Without commentary. Without applause. And the proof outlasted every word ever spoken. Because it was built into the ordinary machinery of their days. And it never once stopped running. 14 terms. Not one of them romantic, in the way we use that word now. No candlelight, no grand gestures, no declarations, just two people who got up every morning and did what the deal required, without negotiation, without therapy, without a single self-help book telling them what they already knew. The deal was not glamorous, it was functional, and it produced something that 40 years of modern relationship advice has not been able to replicate. Marriages that lasted, households that held, children who knew exactly where they stood. Number 1. The deal ended when one of them died, and the survivor kept it anyway. When he died, she still sat 2 places at the table. When she died, his shirts were still pressed and hanging in the closet. A widow in 1974, still rising at 5:30, still making the coffee in the same aluminum percolator, still ironing on Tuesday, still keeping the household ledger even though there was only one column now. His chair in the same spot. His tools still on the pegboard in the garage, each one inside its pencil outline. She still kept the house ready by 5 o'clock. Not for him, for the promise. A widower who kept her garden alive for 11 years after she was gone, watering the roses she had planted, the roses he had never once asked about, with the hose she had picked out from the Sears catalog in 1961. Not because he cared about roses, because she had. The deal did not require a living partner. It only required a person who had made a vow so deep it became the architecture of their days. And when the other half was gone, the architecture did not collapse. It held, because the person still inside it refused to leave. The deal had no name, no contract, no witnesses. 2 people stood in a kitchen in 1953 and began a partnership that neither of them would ever describe out loud. And the reason it worked is the reason it disappeared. It required 2 people who believed that some things are too important to talk about. And they were right. That deal kept the roof intact and the neighbors satisfied, but underneath it, one half of the marriage was carrying a weight. The deal was never designed to hold, and she had already figured out how to carry it alone. She had built an entire private practice of endurance, and no clause in that unspoken deal ever accounted for it. Number 15. The pill that fixed everything. By 1957, over 36 million prescriptions had been filled for a little white tablet called Miltown. It was the first blockbuster tranquilizer in American history. Most of those prescriptions went to women. Doctors prescribed it for headaches, insomnia, tension, even childhood bedwetting. Milton Berle promoted it on national television, calling himself Uncle Miltown, like it was a joke. Housewives, frustrated by lives that seemed to consist of nothing but chores and childcare, were told this pill would fix everything. It did not. Coming off Miltown brought convulsions, hallucinations, and tremors. By 1963, Betty Friedan used the image of the tranquilized housewife as fuel for the feminine mystique. The same doctor who wrote the prescription would later call her an addict. She never had a chance. Nobody asked why she needed the pill in the first place. The answer would have indicted every kitchen, every nursery, and every husband who never once noticed. But long before any doctor reached for a prescription pad, there was something a woman had to manage every single month. Something no one would even name out loud. Number 14. The belt she wore in silence. Every month, a woman strapped on an elastic belt with metal clips and fastened a thick cotton pad between her legs. No adhesive, no comfort, no conversation. The Kotex Wonderform belt came in a small purple box. Modus, the rival brand, sold boxes designed to look like gift packages so a woman could carry one through the store without a soul knowing. The self-adhesive pad would not appear until the early 1970s. For every woman in the 1950s, the belt was not one option among several. It was the only option. Mothers handed their daughters a belt, a box, and a pamphlet from the school nurse. That was the entire education. She carried that belt in silence because every woman before her had done the same. Girls entered womanhood already trained to believe that their own bodies were something shameful, something best managed behind a locked door. The conversation that should have happened never did. The silence around the body did not end with menstruation. When a woman gave birth and something went terribly wrong inside her mind, the silence only grew louder. Number 13. The darkness after the baby. There was no name for it. A new mother who could not stop crying, who stared at walls for hours, who recoiled from her own infant, was told she had a nervous condition. The treatment was electroshock therapy. In 1951, a 20-year-old woman in Ontario gave birth and fell apart. She was sent to a psychiatric hospital. Her husband drove 4 hours every weekend to visit. After nearly a year, she was pronounced cured and released. Ladies' Home Journal ran a piece on something called Third Day Blues in 1952. It was the first time the subject appeared in a major American magazine. The advice was simple: it will pass. Medical authorities blamed women who suffered after childbirth for their own distress. The answer was never to question motherhood itself. It was always to fix the mother. She was not treated. She was removed. The baby she carried for 9 months became evidence against her, proof that something inside her was broken beyond repair. At least the new mother had a diagnosis, however brutal the response. The woman going through the change had nothing. Not a word, not a pill, not even permission to say she was suffering. Number 12. The change nobody spoke of. They called it the change of life. Hot flashes at the kitchen table in July, sweating through a cotton house dress with company in the next room. Insomnia that lasted for weeks. Premarin had arrived in 1942, but most family doctors never mentioned hormone treatment to their female patients. The word menopause barely appeared in women's magazines. In earlier decades, physicians had institutionalized women for something called climacteric insanity. By the 50s, the formal diagnosis was gone. The shame was not. She was expected to set the table and smile through it. Her own husband often had no idea what was happening. She suffered in a house full of people, and not one of them thought to ask. Some women held on through the change with nothing but willpower. Others found something to take the edge off. Not a pill this time, a bottle. Number 11. The bottle behind the bleach. A fifth of gin behind the Clorox under the kitchen sink. Vodka in the back of the linen closet because it left no smell on the breath. Official statistics counted 850,000 female alcoholics in the United States. Workers in the field said the true number was many times higher. One recovered woman told a counselor that the neighbors never knew her bedroom floor was Skid Row. Alcoholics Anonymous was overwhelmingly male. A woman who walked into a meeting was usually the only woman in the room. A drunk husband was a problem. A drunk mother was an abomination. That double standard kept her trapped. And the shame kept her pouring. She drank to disappear. And the cruelest part was that it worked. Nobody in her life noticed she was vanishing right in front of them. 5 problems. 5 kinds of silence. Not one of them appears in any sitcom, any Sears catalog, any church bulletin from that decade. These were the invisible costs of being the person who held everything together. What follows is what happened when that silence reached into the most private rooms of the house. Number 10. The duty that had no discussion. A wife was expected to be available to her husband, whether she wanted to be or not. There was no language for refusal. Marriage manuals advised women to be responsive. That was the full extent of the guidance. Marital rape was not recognized as a crime in the United States. It would not become illegal in all 50 states until 1993. She could not refuse. She could only endure. She did not have a right to her own body in the eyes of the law. And in the eyes of the culture, she did not even have the words. Her silence in the bedroom was not consent. It was survival. She learned to leave her body the way soldiers learn to leave a battlefield. Number 9. The flour canister bank. A married woman could not open a bank account without her husband's signature. She could not get a credit card in her own name. If she wanted money that was truly hers, she hid it. Folded bills inside the flour canister. Quarters in a coffee can behind the preserves. Dollar bills safety pinned inside the lining of a winter coat. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act did not pass until 1974. If he drank the money, gambled it, or simply left, she had nothing. That hidden money was not savings. It was an escape fund. Every woman who kept one knew exactly what it was for. Some of those flour canisters held 20 years of nickels and dimes. 20 years of planning for a door she might never walk through. She could not control her money. In many cases, she could not even control whether she became pregnant. Number 8. Before the pill. The birth control pill was not approved until 1960. Before that, a woman's options were unreliable, humiliating, or dangerous. Many doctors refused to prescribe diaphragms, especially for unmarried women. Condoms were sold only to men. The rhythm method failed regularly. Lysol disinfectant was marketed in coded language as a feminine hygiene solution. Every woman who read that advertisement understood what it really meant. The average American woman in 1955 had 3.7 children. Many had more than they could feed. For the truly desperate, There were whispered addresses, back rooms, kitchen tables. She could not prevent it. She could not end it safely. And once the baby arrived, she could not leave the marriage that made her desperate. Every pregnancy was a gamble with her life, and the odds were set by men who would never carry the consequences inside their own bodies. When a pregnancy ended not by choice but by nature, what followed was often just as lonely. Number 7. The baby they never mentioned. Miscarriage and stillbirth were common. They were also unspeakable. A woman who lost a pregnancy was expected to recover quickly, grieve privately, and try again. No counseling, no memorial. In some hospitals, a stillborn baby was taken away before the mother could hold it. There was no death certificate for a miscarriage before 20 weeks. No record that the child had ever existed. She came home to the same kitchen and the same children. She answered the phone and said she was fine. A loss with no name is a loss you carry alone. That grief lived inside her for decades, not because she was weak, because no one gave it a place to exist. Some women kept a single blanket or a tiny cap hidden in a drawer, the only proof that someone real had been loved and lost. Number 6. The diet pill that never slept. Doctors routinely prescribed amphetamines for weight loss, Dexedrine, Benzedrine, Disoxin. The pills were speed, and millions of women were taking them. She swallowed one with her morning coffee and was scrubbing baseboards at midnight. Then came the cycle no one warned her about. Amphetamines in the morning to go up, barbiturates at night to come down, day after day. These were not drugs from a back alley. They came from the family physician in a labeled bottle with a smile across the counter. When she got hooked, it was called her weakness, never the prescription. She trusted her doctor with her life. He handed her an addiction wrapped in a white coat and a reassuring nod, and walked away clean. 10 problems deep, and we have not yet reached the ones that left marks on the body. What comes next struck at the very thing her reputation was built on, her body, her worth, and the fiction that she controlled either one. Number 5. The surgery nobody saw. When a woman found a lump, the standard procedure was the Halsted radical mastectomy. The entire breast was removed. The chest wall muscle was taken. The lymph nodes under the arm were removed. William Halsted developed the operation in the 1890s. It remained standard care well into the 1970s, long after evidence suggested less radical procedures could produce comparable survival rates. A woman often went into surgery not knowing whether she would come out whole. The biopsy and the mastectomy were performed under the same anesthesia. She signed a consent form, giving the surgeon permission to decide while she was unconscious. Afterward, she was fitted with a prosthetic form, sold by mail order for discretion. The word cancer itself was whispered. Neighbors said a long illness, no pink ribbons, no awareness walks. The scar ran from her collarbone to her lowest rib. She wore it under her clothes for the rest of her life. She dressed in the dark. She turned away from mirrors. A body she once trusted had become something she was taught to hide. Number 4. The blame she carried alone. When a couple could not conceive, the fault was assumed to be hers. Her husband was rarely tested. She endured the Rubin test, carbon dioxide forced through the fallopian tubes without anesthesia, or a hysterosalpingogram, iodine dye injected through the cervix. Her husband gave no sample. No one checked his count. The assumption was simple: she was defective. In a decade that told women their only purpose was motherhood, infertility was not a diagnosis. It was a verdict. She served that sentence alone while every woman on her block pushed a stroller past her window. Church friends whispered that maybe God had a reason. That reason always pointed back to her, as though her empty arms were punishment for something only heaven understood. Number 3, the problem that had no name. She had a house, a car, a washing machine, and 2 children. She also had a suffocating emptiness that no appliance could fix. Betty Friedan would not name it until 1963. In the 50s, it had no name at all. 750 square feet of linoleum and formica. Every house on the block identical. Coffee with the same 3 neighbors every Tuesday. Children at school from 8 to 3. Husband gone from 7 to 6. She ironed, she vacuumed, she set the table, and waited. Today on social media, millions of young women romanticize the 50s housewife. They never show the woman standing at the kitchen window at 2 in the afternoon, wondering if this was all there would ever be. The suburb was supposed to be the American dream. For millions of women, it was the American silence. She had everything the magazines promised her, and still she felt like she was disappearing one perfectly folded towel at a time. When a woman's sadness deepened past what coffee could reach, the answer was not treatment. It was removal. Number 2, sent away for having feelings. When a woman's unhappiness became visible, her husband and her doctor could have her committed. No crime required, no hearing, no appeal. Committal laws in most states allowed a husband and 1 physician to sign a woman into an institution without her consent. Treatment included insulin shock therapy and electroconvulsive therapy without anesthesia. Some women were committed for refusing housework. Others were committed for expressing opinions their husbands found unreasonable. Some never came home. In 1955, a woman who cried too much could be locked away by the 2 men closest to her. The asylum was the final wall. The message was always the same. Your feelings are the problem. The world that caused them is not. The women who survived those wards came home quieter than before. That was the point. Silence was the only cure they were ever offered. Every item on this list lived behind the same closed door. And behind that door, for more women than anyone ever counted, there was one final secret. Number 1. What happened when he closed the door? She was hit. And there was nowhere to go. The first domestic violence shelter in the United States, Haven House in Pasadena, did not open until 1964. The Violence Against Women Act did not become law until 1994. Police routinely dismissed violence in the home as a private family matter. Training manuals discouraged officers from making arrests. A study in Chicago found that 1 in 8 married women had been severely beaten at least once. Women who sought help from their ministers were told to be more obedient. Pray harder. Today, there are more than 1,500 domestic violence shelters across this country. In 1955, there were none, not one. She stayed, not because she was weak, because every exit was sealed. No money, no credit, no shelter, no legal protection. No one who would believe her word over his. The bruises healed. The silence did not. Her children watched from the hallway. They learned that love looked like this. And decades later, some of them repeated the only lesson they were ever taught. 15 problems. Not one required a modern solution. They required one thing the entire decade refused to give: a witness. Somewhere tonight, a woman in her 80s is sitting in a kitchen that looks nothing like the one she grew up in. The belt is gone. The pills have different names. The shelter exists. The bank account is hers. But the memories are still there, folded tight, stored in a place no one has ever asked to see. She handled it. They all did, not because they were built for suffering, because no one gave them another option. Those methods kept a woman standing when everything around her said she should have broken. But for some women, the problems were not quiet. They were dangerous, and the strategies required to survive them were built on a completely different kind of silence. This was not coping anymore. This was calculation, practiced daily, with no one else allowed to know the stakes. Number 17. The neighbor who kept her porch light on. One woman on the block silently appointed herself the witness. She kept her porch light burning past midnight on the nights it got bad next door. The yellow glow of a 60-watt Sylvania bulb behind a frosted glass fixture. A woman in a cotton housecoat stepping onto her porch with a cup of Sanka, settling into the metal glider, and not going back inside until the house next door went quiet. He knew someone was watching. She knew someone was there. One woman decided another woman was not going to be alone in the dark. And the women who kept that light burning never once spoke about why. Number 16. The grocery money she skimmed one dime at a time. She patted the grocery bill, a dime here, a quarter there. Loose change from the A&P slipped into a coat pocket instead of the change purse he checked every Friday. A pound of ground chuck at 39 cents, a box of Tide at 31 cents. She bought the store brand and pocketed the difference. The coins went into a mason jar behind the spick and span under the kitchen sink. By 1957, a woman who skimmed 15 cents a trip for 2 years had close to $30. Enough for 3 nights at a motor court and a Greyhound ticket to her sister's house. She never called it a plan. She called it housekeeping. And every coin was an act of defiance, so small he never noticed it, and so large it might one day save her life. Number 15. The doctor who set the bone and said nothing. The family doctor treated her injuries and never documented the cause. A cracked rib wrapped in Johnson & Johnson adhesive tape, 85 cents at the Rexall drugstore. The doctor pressing gently along her jawline. Does this hurt? How about here? Then the pen moved across the chart. Patient reports a fall. No further treatment required. He knew. She knew he knew. Sometimes he handed her a prescription for Milltown. $2 for a bottle of 50. Today, there are more than 2,000 domestic violence shelters in the United States. In 1955, there were none, not one, in a decade when speaking the truth could cost a woman her children. The doctor's silence was the closest thing to protection the system offered. Number 14. The church was the only door he could not lock. Church attendance was the one activity a husband could not forbid without raising suspicion. Sunday morning service, Wednesday prayer meeting, the quilting circle in the basement. Every single one was an exit. The smell of lemon oil and old hymnals. She sat with the other women, and no one asked about the bruise beneath her collar. But afterward, in the gravel parking lot beside a Ford Country Squire, an older woman might squeeze her hand. You can always call me. He works Tuesdays, doesn't he? The church did not save her, but the parking lot might have. Number 13. An immaculate house was not pride, it was defense. She kept every surface flawless because any imperfection could become the excuse. A dish left in the sink, a toy on the floor. She did not clean for beauty. She cleaned to survive the evening. Pine Sol on linoleum. His dinner on the table at exactly 5:30. His chair pulled out. His Pabst Blue Ribbon poured into a glass before the car door shut. If everything was perfect, there was nothing to punish. Neighbors called her a wonderful homemaker. But the engine behind it was not devotion. It was the cold, daily calculation of a woman who had learned exactly which failures were forgiven and which ones were not. Every method so far operated on the same principle. She did not fight the system. She moved inside it. She used the grocery store, the doctor's office, the church, and the kitchen itself, not to escape, but to build a space just wide enough to breathe. This was not submission. It was engineering. And the reason these methods worked is the same reason they have been forgotten. They were invisible by design, but some of her methods were not invisible at all. Some were chemical. Number 12. The nerve pills and the bottle behind the bleach. Millions of American women in the 1950s were prescribed tranquilizers to cope with lives they were not permitted to describe honestly. Milltown was approved in 1955. By 1957, 1 billion tablets had been sold. Advertisements in McCall's showed a smiling woman in a clean kitchen with the tagline for the anxiety of everyday life. $2 at the pharmacy, no questions asked. And in the kitchen, a bottle of Taylor cooking sherry on the shelf between the vanilla extract and the vinegar. A tablespoon for the recipe, a long sip for the cook. Nobody counted the bottles. Today, Americans spend over $300 billion a year on mental health services. In 1956, a woman's entire mental health plan fit inside a brown glass bottle. Nobody offered her anything better. Number 11. The party line warning system. In rural America, telephone party lines shared by 4 to 8 households became an informal early warning network. A woman calling her neighbor at 9 o'clock at night. "I just wanted to let you know the roast is burning." A sentence that meant nothing to an outsider and everything to the woman on the other end. It meant he is drinking. It meant get the children ready. It meant leave the back door unlocked. Party lines cost $2.50 a month from Bell Telephone. For some women, they were a lifeline no engineer ever intended to build. When private lines replaced them in the 1960s, that network disappeared overnight. Number 10. Sending the children next door before it started. She learned the signs before he crossed the threshold, the sound of the car, the way the front door closed, the weight of his footsteps, a 6-year-old in pajamas carrying a younger sibling down the back porch steps in the dark. A screen door eased shut so it would not bang. The neighbor's kitchen door already open. A plate of graham crackers and a glass of milk already on the table. The neighbor never asked why they came. Sometimes it was an hour. Sometimes it was all night. In the morning, the children walked back home. Their mother had combed her hair and made pancakes. The children always knew. And the neighbor who opened that door every single time gave those children something their mother could not. One room in the world where no one was afraid. Number 9. She used his vanity as a shield. A man who hid his wife behind closed doors would not mark her face the morning of the company picnic. She learned to schedule around his pride. His boss coming for Saturday pot roast. His bowling league banquet at the Moose Lodge. She planned social engagements in clusters because a visible bruise was the one thing his reputation could not survive. She hosted the bridge card party, not because she wanted to, because every evening with witnesses was a night without fists, and he never once realized the dinner party was not for him. It was instead of him. Number 8. The savings account at a different bank. Some women opened a small passbook savings account at a bank across town where no teller recognized his face. A First Federal passbook tucked inside a Butterick sewing pattern envelope in the bottom of her sewing basket. Deposits of $2, $3, $5 if she had sold eggs that week. The passbook never came into the house. Today, roughly 1 in 4 American women report having a financial account their partner does not know about. In 1956, that secret passbook was not financial planning. It was proof she believed in a future he had not approved. And for some women, Just knowing it existed was enough to stay alive one more year. Not a single method on this list so far involved the police, a lawyer, or any institution designed to protect citizens. The entire survival system was private, built by women, maintained by women, hidden from men. Every institution in the 1950s was designed to preserve the marriage, not the woman inside it. So she built her own. And some of the most desperate methods looked from the outside like the most ordinary moments in a housewife's week. Number 7. Going home. To mother for the weekend. Going home to mother was the only acceptable way for a married woman to leave her husband's house without scandal. The gravel driveway, the screen door, her mother standing at the stove, not asking a single question. 2 nights in her childhood bed with her daughter beside her and a door that did not need to be locked. The silent drive home Sunday evening, the children asleep in the back seat. The weekend was never discussed and never explained, but the pattern repeated. Her mother knew. Her mother always knew. And the fact that she never said it aloud was not denial. It was the only shelter she could build. Number 6. She memorized his schedule. Like a science, she knew which nights were dangerous and which were safe. Payday was dangerous. Wednesday after bowling league was usually safe. In her mind, never written down, a second calendar ran underneath the one from the Esso station on the kitchen wall. Most dangerous window, Friday 6 o'clock to Saturday noon. Safe days, Sundays after church, weeknights when his mother called. She timed errands, baths for the children, and her own sleep around his rhythms with the precision of a factory shift schedule. She could not change him, so she mapped him. That map was the most important document in the household. It was never written down because writing it down would have meant admitting it was real. Number 5. The science of not setting him off. She learned exactly which words, which tones, which expressions triggered him, and she removed everyone from her behavior. Eyes down when he spoke, agreement before he finished the sentence, his beer in the glass, never the can, his newspaper unfolded on the arm of the lazy boy. She rehearsed her voice in the bathroom mirror, calm, even, warm enough to pass, flat enough not to provoke. The performance ran 7 days a week with no intermission. Every modern therapist would call this hypervigilance. Every woman who lived it called it Tuesday. She was not broken. She was reading the room with a precision most people will never need, and she did it for decades. Number 4. Sleeping in the children's room. On the worst nights, she moved into the children's bedroom, not because the children needed her there, because he would not follow her there. The narrow space between the twin bed and the wall, a chenille bedspread pulled over her legs, the glow of a Donald Duck nightlight plugged into the baseboard, her body between the door and the bed, his footsteps in the hallway, the doorknob not turning, the footsteps going back, the silence that meant it was over for tonight. Even a violent man had a line he would not cross in front of a sleeping child. She bet her safety on that line every single night, and every night she was right is a night she does not talk about. Number 3. She befriended the right wife in town. She cultivated one specific friendship, the police chief's wife, the pastor's wife, the foreman's wife at the plant where her husband worked. Not for gossip, for leverage she hoped never to use. Coffee at her kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, a Pyrex percolator, a plate of Nabisco social tea biscuits. The friendship was real, but underneath it ran a calculation as old as survival itself. If things ever got bad enough to need a witness, that witness would be believed. In 1956, a woman's word meant nothing unless it was backed by the right last name. And the woman across the table probably understood exactly what was happening, because she had seen it before. 17 methods. Not one required a telephone hotline, a shelter address, or a courtroom. Every single one ran on observation, patience, and a knowledge of human behavior so precise it could have been published as a clinical manual. It never was, because the women who knew these things had no language for what they were surviving, no audience that would have listened, and no guarantee that speaking would not make everything worse. So the knowledge moved the only way it could, mother to daughter, silence to silence. And it is almost gone. But the most devastating survival method on this entire list was not something she did for herself. It was something she did to her daughter, without ever saying a single word. Number 2, teaching her daughter without words. She never sat her daughter down and explained what was happening. She did not have to. The lessons were delivered in gestures, in glances, in the architecture of daily life, and her daughter absorbed every one. A 10-year-old girl watching her mother's posture change when the car pulled into the driveway, watching her mother's hands move faster at the stove, watching her mother check the hallway mirror and smooth her hair and adjust her expression before the front door opened. The girl learned. Read his mood before he speaks. Clear the table before he asks. Make yourself small when the air in the room changes. Do not cry where he can hear you. She learned all of this by the age of 12 and could not have explained how she knew it. It was in her body before it was in her mind. The mother did not mean to teach it. The daughter did not choose to learn it. And 40 years later, that daughter still checks the front door when she hears a car engine and cannot explain why. Some lessons survive the house they were learned in. Some lessons survive everything. Number 1, the escape plan. She carried for 30 years and never used. She had a plan. It lived entirely inside her head. A route, a destination, a sequence of steps rehearsed so many times they were worn smooth. She never wrote it down, she never told a soul, and she never used it. The Greyhound schedule memorized from the board at the downtown bus terminal. The 6:15 a.m. to Indianapolis that stopped in Terre Haute. Her sister's address on Maple Street. The $31.40 in the passbook at First Federal. 2 changes of clothes for each child that would fit in the Samsonite train case stored on the top shelf of the hall closet. The spare house key under the 3rd flower pot on the back porch. The route from the back door to the neighbor's driveway. She rehearsed it on the worst nights, lying in the dark, listening to him breathe. Every detail in place, every step accounted for. She ran through it the way a pilot runs through a pre-flight checklist. Calm, precise, complete. And then morning came. And she made breakfast. And she stayed. She stayed for the children. She stayed because divorce Wohlschures in 1956 meant a judge could take her kids. She stayed because a woman alone with 3 children and no work history and $31 would not survive past Tuesday. She stayed because the plan itself was enough, not enough to leave, enough to survive. Knowing she could go meant she did not have to. And she carried that plan for 30 years, through every bad night, every quiet morning, every holiday photograph where she smiled with her hand on his shoulder. She never told a living soul. And somewhere right now, one of those women is still here, sitting in a kitchen, 90 years old, and she remembers every single detail. Not because someone reminded her, because some things you carry in your body, not your mind, and they never leave. Survival demanded one set of skills, but some women were not just surviving inside a marriage, they were living a separate life within it. And the rules for keeping that life invisible made everything you just watched look simple. What she hid took more discipline than what she endured. Number 20. The two-ring signal on the party line, a prearranged code on the shared neighborhood telephone line. 2 rings. Hang up. Call back in 10 minutes. The black Bakelite bell system, 302 model, sat on a doily on the hall table. The cloth-wrapped cord coiled like a sleeping snake. There was the faint click of a neighbor lifting her receiver down the block on the same circuit. Party line service from American Telephone and Telegraph cost $3.50 a month in 1954. Private service cost $7. Most working families took the cheaper option. That meant up to 8 households shared one wire. Every wife on a party line knew that click. They also knew which neighbor was listening. There was an unspoken agreement among certain women on certain streets. I will not tell on you if you do not tell on me. That was the first sisterhood most of them ever joined. But the telephone was only one channel. The mailbox was another. And the front porch spoke in objects, not words. Number 19. The hairpin in the screen door. A bobby pin slid into the screen mesh at a specific angle. Coast clear. Husband at work. Come around the back. Gala bobby pins, the black enamel kind, sold 10 cents a card at the Woolworth lunch counter in every small town in America. The aluminum screen doors with the scrolled S or the wheat stalk grill. The soft thwack of the spring closer. A child walking past on the sidewalk would never notice it. The pin sat in the screen for 90 minutes, and then it was gone. A signal that left no paper trail, no fingerprint, no echo. Only the person it was meant for would ever see it. Signals were for the porch. Cover stories were for the calendar. And Tuesday afternoons belonged to one institution above all others. Number 18. The bridge club that never played bridge. The standing Tuesday or Thursday afternoon ladies' bridge club. Sometimes real, sometimes a rotating mutual alibi. Folding card tables set up in the living room. Bicycle playing cards in the blue box. Pimento cheese spread on Pepperidge Farm white bread with the crusts cut off. A pitcher of iced tea sweating on a tin tray. The hostess was supposed to rotate, but somehow it was always at Marjorie's. A husband who asked too many questions about bridge scores looked petty. A husband who never asked looked secure. Every wife knew which kind she had married. The bridge club covered the afternoon. The hotel register, 2 towns over, covered everything else. Number 17. Mr. and Mrs. Smith at the hotel register. Signing into a downtown commercial hotel under a false name. Paid in cash. The Statler in Buffalo. The Roosevelt in New Orleans. The Edison in Midtown Manhattan. A double room cost $8 to $14 a night in 1957. The fountain pen chained to the registration desk. The bellhop who had seen everything and remembered nothing for a $1 tip. Front desk clerks ran an unwritten code of discretion that survived 2 world wars. That code died in 1986 when credit cards became mandatory for incidental charges. There is no Smith line on a Marriott reservation today. The hotel left no trace on paper, but the body always left a trace, and that is where the bottles on the vanity came in. Number 16. The perfume rotation. A second perfume, kept somewhere other than the bedroom vanity, used only on the afternoons that mattered. Evening in Paris in the cobalt blue Bourjois bottle, sold at the dime store for 99 cents. That was the everyday scent, the one the husband smelled on the pillow. Then a real bottle of Chanel No. 5, or Schiaparelli's shocking in the pink bottle shaped like a dressmaker's form, kept in a glove compartment or tucked inside a hat box. A woman's scent was her signature. Carrying 2 of them meant carrying 2 selves. Some women did this for 40 years and never once mixed them up. Perfume could be reapplied. Lipstick was harder, unless you knew the trick. Number 15. The reverse lipstick on the collar, putting her own lipstick on her husband's collar before he came home. Any other mark already there became invisible by being expected. Revlon's Fire and Ice, launched in 1952, was the most sold lipstick in American history at the time. $1.25 a tube. The waxy red smear pressed onto a starched white arrow dart collar. A wife pressing herself against him at the front door before he had even taken his hat off. It looked like affection. It functioned like camouflage. The cleverest covers were always the ones that looked like love. Pause here for a moment. Every one of these tricks required a husband who was not really paying attention, and a wife who had figured that out years ago. The American marriage of 1955 was not, for most women, the postcard. It was a contract signed at 20 between two strangers who then spent 40 years pretending to know each other. Some of them filled the silence with bridge clubs. Some filled it with gin. Some filled it with a man in a two-tone Buick parked 3 streets over on Wednesdays at 2. The tricks were not really about sex. They were about being allowed for 90 minutes a week to be a person nobody at home was looking at. And once you had your 90 minutes, you had to account for them. Every dollar, every receipt, every minute on the odometer. Number 14. The padded grocery receipt. Inflating the grocery list to skim cash off the household budget without it showing. The A&P. Kroger, Piggly Wiggly. A loaf of Wonder Bread, 18 cents. A pound of Maxwell House coffee, 79 cents. The brown paper receipt curling at the edges, totaled by hand and pencil by a clerk in a starched apron. The husband who handed over $20 every Friday for groceries and never once looked at the slip. Every dollar squirreled away was independence. Most women in 1955 routinely faced banking policies that barred them from opening a bank account in their own name without a husband co-signing. The grocery receipt was the only ledger they controlled. Cash had to be spent somewhere, and the department store ladies' lounge was a city unto itself. Number 13. The department store powder room. Using the cavernous ladies' lounges at Marshall Field's, Wanamaker's, Gimbel's, and Hudson's as private meeting spaces and message drops, the lounge on the 7th floor at Marshall Field's in Chicago had upholstered chaises in pale green silk. A black attendant in a starched uniform handed out fresh hand towels. A tip dish sat by the sink with quarters glinting in the bottom. Cigarette smoke layered with the smell of Coty face powder and Jergens lotion. The husband would never enter. The lounge was the one square of American real estate outside her own bathroom, where a wife could not be followed. Notes could be passed in a powder room, but letters needed an address, and not the one on her driver's license. Number 12. The downtown post office box. A rented post office box, paid in cash, at a federal post office in a different part of town. Brass-doored boxes with little combination dials in long rows under the marble lobby light. $1.50 every 6 months in 1953. The little brass key on a separate ring she kept inside the silk lining of her pocketbook. Every letter she could not bring home went there. Some women kept those boxes their entire lives. When they died, the keys were found in jewelry boxes by their daughters, and the daughters never knew what they had once opened. Mail was one route in, the dry cleaner's counter was another, and it ran on a code older than the telephone. Number 11. The dry cleaner as go-between. Using the neighborhood dry cleaner, almost always a family-run shop with a back room, to leave and pick up messages or small parcels. The smell of perchloroethylene and steam-pressed cotton, The motorized conveyor of garments on wire hangers under thin plastic sleeves. The handwritten ticket stub torn in duplicate. The proprietor who knew your husband's shirt size by heart. The dry cleaner knew your husband's collar measurement and your perfume and your secret. He never said a word. That kind of discretion was a profession. It does not exist anymore. Every wife needed a reason to be gone for 2 hours on the same day every week. That is what the Standing Friday appointment was built for. Number 10. The Standing Friday Beauty Parlor appointment. A weekly 2-hour wash and sat at the same salon. Sometimes real, sometimes elastic. The hooded chrome hairdryer that roared like a small airplane. The chemical sting of Aquanet hairspray. The permanent wave solution that made your eyes water. Lucky Strikes burning in a glass ashtray on the manicure table. A shampoo and set ran $2.50. A permanent wave, $8. The beautician, always called by her first name, who knew everything about every wife on the block. The beautician was the priest of mid-century American womanhood. She heard every confession and gave no penance. Some of those women carried other women's secrets to the grave. But the body has to come home, and the body always leaves a trace on the breath. Number 9. The Listerine on the vanity. The mouthwash habit practiced openly so it looked routine. The amber glass bottle of Listerine antiseptic sat on the bathroom shelf next to the Pepsodent and the Burma Shave. Send breath squares in the little paper packet, a nickel at any newsstand. Pall Mall smoke and Lucky Strike smoke layered under it all. A husband who came home to a wife already smelling of mint never thought twice. The best covers were the ones a husband had been trained by advertising to expect. Listerine sold over 15 million bottles a year by 1958. A lot of those bottles were doing a second job. Pause again. Notice what every one of these has in common. None of them required lying. They required arranging. The 1950s wife did not improvise. She built systems. She kept ledgers in her head that a tax accountant would envy. Which neighbors sat on the porch on Wednesdays? Which clerk worked the register on Thursday afternoons? Which dry cleaner closed early on Saturdays? Which beautician would cover for her if a husband called the salon? She was running a small corporation with a staff of 1. And she was doing it in a girdle, in 2-inch heels, on 3 hours of sleep, with a roast in the oven set to be done at 5:55 exactly. The competence of that generation is almost unspeakable now. Consider what she was working with. No global positioning system tracking the family car. No itemized credit card statement arriving in the mail on the 15th. Women were frequently denied their own credit cards until 1974, when the Equal Credit Opportunity Act finally passed. Before that, banks and businesses routinely refused to let a married woman obtain a mortgage, sign a lease, or open a checking account without her husband's signature. She was, in the eyes of the law, barely an adult. And yet in the eyes of the neighborhood, she was the woman who ran everything, who paid the milkman on Tuesday, who knew which morning the iceman still came, who remembered every birthday on both sides of the family without a calendar. That contradiction is the heart of it. Powerless on paper, sovereign in practice. The kitchen was the only office she would ever hold, and she ran it like General Motors. The Hoover upright vacuum in the hall closet, the Singer sewing machine in the spare bedroom, the pressure cooker on the back burner, the Sunbeam toaster on the counter, every appliance a tool, every tool an extension of a mind that nobody, including her husband, was studying closely. She read the Ladies' Home Journal at the kitchen table and folded the corner of the page where the article ended. She knew the Sears Roebuck catalog by heart. She watched as the world turns on the black and white Philco at 1:30 every weekday afternoon, ironing handkerchiefs through the entire half hour. And somewhere inside that domestic choreography, she carved out 90 minutes a week that belonged only to her. Whether she spent those minutes at a sewing circle, a confession booth, a hotel room, or a friend's apartment with a canary by the window, the minutes were hers, nobody else's. Not for the rest of her natural life would she give them back. And consider the geography she was working inside. A neighborhood of 300 houses where every front lawn was watched by at least 4 other front lawns. The mailman who knew which envelopes came in a woman's handwriting. The milkman who saw which back doors were unlocked at 10 in the morning. The paperboy on his Schwinn who noticed which driveways held an extra car on a Wednesday afternoon. Every block was a small intelligence agency, and every wife knew it. The trick was not to outrun the surveillance. The trick was to feed it the story it already wanted to believe. So she joined the Methodist Ladies Auxiliary. She brought a tuna casserole to every funeral within 6 blocks. She mailed Christmas cards to 47 households every December, signed in her best Palmer Method cursive. She volunteered at the Cub Scout pack meeting on the 2nd Monday of the month. She made herself so visibly, predictably, unimpeachably good that nobody, not even her own mother-in-law, would ever think to ask where she really was on Thursday afternoons at 3. The reputation was the camouflage. The casserole was the camouflage. The Christmas card list was the camouflage. By the time she was 40, she had built a public self so thick that the private self could move around behind it undetected for the rest of her life. Number 8. The coded want ads. Coded personal messages in the classified section of the daily paper. The newspaper, that thing every husband read at the kitchen table over his coffee, was also a postal service. For those who knew how to read it differently, the smell of newsprint on a man's fingers at breakfast, the personals column tucked between lost and found and help wanted female, 3 lines for 50 cents at the Cleveland Plain Dealer or the Detroit Free Press. To my Robin, Thursday, the usual place, 3 o'clock, signed J. Hundreds of them ran every week in every major city paper from 1948 until about 1972. Some wives clipped them out and saved them folded inside a Bible. The Bible was the one book a husband would never open uninvited. Some secrets had to be carried on her person, and the compact in a woman's handbag was rarely just a compact. Number 7. The compact with the second compartment. Powder compacts manufactured with a hidden compartment beneath the powder pan. Stratton of London. Volupt. Elgin American. The silver-plated and enamel-lidded compacts that were standard 1950s pocketbook equipment. $4 to $15 at the cosmetics counter at Lord & Taylor. A press of a hidden tab, and the powder pan lifted on a tiny hinge to reveal a flat space beneath. A folded note. A key. A photograph the size of a postage stamp. A woman's purse was the last sovereign territory she owned. A husband who went through it crossed a line that even other husbands judged him for. Most of them never did. And on the top shelf of every bedroom closet sat something a husband had even less reason to touch. Number 6. The hat box on the top shelf. The round cardboard hat box kept on the closet's high shelf, supposedly storing a wedding hat or a black mourning veil. Actually used as a strongbox for letters, photographs, and cash. Hat boxes from B. Altman, Bonwit Teller, and Lord & Taylor in pale pink or hunter green with gross grain ribbon handles. The faint smell of mothballs and lavender sachet on the lid. A husband who pulled it down would find a hat on top. Underneath was the rest of her life. When those women died in the 1990s and the 2000s, their daughters cleaned out the closets and found the hat boxes. A lot of daughters never told their fathers what was inside. Some of those daughters are still not telling. Some go-betweens came to the front door in a uniform. And the uniform was the perfect disguise. Number 5. The Avon Lady Calling Card. The Avon representative, or the Fuller Brushman, or the Tupperware lady used as cover, sometimes as actual courier. The cardboard sample case opened on the kitchen table. The little glass tubes of Avon Topaz cologne with the gold caps. The doorbell at 10:30 in the morning exactly. The neighbor across the street who saw the visit through her front window and thought nothing of it. Door-to-door selling was the perfect cover because it was expected. A woman in a kitchen with an Avon lady at the table was the most ordinary scene in America. Ordinary was the best disguise ever invented. And when she did leave the house, she always came home with proof of where she said she had been. Number 4. The Matinee Ticket Stub. The single movie theater ticket stub kept in the coat pocket as documentary evidence of an afternoon supposedly spent at the pictures. Lowe's, the RKO Palace, the Bijou on Main Street. A matinee ticket, 50 cents in 1956. The stub printed on pink or yellow cardstock, perforated down the middle. A bag of jujubes in the pocketbook, half-eaten, for verisimilitude. A faint smell of buttered popcorn on the wool coat. She could describe the picture in detail because she had seen it the week before, alone, on a Tuesday, learning her lines. Nothing about her performance was accidental. Pause one last time. The thing nobody says about this era is how intelligent it required a woman to be. There were no apps, no global positioning system in the dashboard, no text messages to delete. Every alibi was constructed from scratch, every week, in her own head, while she packed school lunches and ironed shirts and listened to Arthur Godfrey on the radio. She was a logistics officer running a covert operation out of a kitchen with a hotpoint range. We tell ourselves the 1950s housewife was simple. She was not simple. She was contained. There is a difference. And the difference is the entire story. The last 3 were not really tricks at all. They were structures, the architecture of the lie itself. Number 3. The friend's apartment. Borrowing a single friend's apartment, almost always a divorced or widowed friend, for an afternoon. The one the neighborhood whispered about. Watching the cat, she would say. A walk up on the 3rd floor of a brick building near downtown. A kitchenette with a hotpoint 2-burner stove. A canary in a brass cage by the window. A neighbor's tabby cat that did in fact need feeding. The key on a thin red ribbon kept in the glove box of the Chevrolet. The divorced friend was the one woman on the block nobody wanted to be. And the one woman every wife on the block secretly needed. She held the key, literally, and in many of these houses there was one other person who knew everything and said nothing for 50 years. Number 2. The maid who saw it all. The household help, almost always a black woman, in the South and in many northern suburbs alike, who came in 2 days a week and saw everything. The starched white apron tied at the back. The bus ride in from across town that started at 5:30 in the morning. Pine Sol on the kitchen linoleum. Argo starch sprayed on the shirt collars. A wage of $3 to $5 a day in 1955. She knew which afternoons the husband was at the office and which afternoons he was not. She knew which side of the bed had been slept in and which had not. She kept her job by keeping her mouth shut. The silence of those women is one of the great unwritten histories of this country. They saw more of mid-century American marriage than any sociologist ever did. And after every one of these tricks, after the hairpin and the hat box and the maid's averted eyes, every wife came home to the same room and performed the same ritual that hid all the rest. Number 1. The roast at 6 o'clock. The single most effective cover ever devised. The perfect domestic performance. Dinner on the table at 6 sharp. Husband's slippers waiting by the chair. Children washed and combed. Wife in fresh lipstick at the front door. A pot roast in a Pyrex casserole, browned in the oven at 325 degrees since 2 in the afternoon. Green beans from a Del Monte can, drained and warmed with a pat of butter. Mashed potatoes whipped with a Sunbeam Mixmaster. A martini built on a silver tray. 3 parts Beefeater gin, 1 part Noilly Prat vermouth, a green olive on a toothpick, handed to him before he had taken his hat off. The Westinghouse radio playing low in the corner, everything in its place. The roast was the alibi. The ironed shirt was the alibi. The whole house smelling of onions and Johnson's floor wax at 6 o'clock was the alibi. The 1950s wife did not hide her affair in a hotel or a hatbox. She hid it inside the perfect performance of being the woman everyone expected her to be. That was the trick. That was always the trick. The houses these women ran are mostly gone now. The party lines are gone. The hat boxes are in estate sales for $5 apiece. The maids have died, most of them carrying what they knew. The husbands went first. They almost always do. And the wives, the few still alive, are 92 years old in nursing homes in Central Florida. They still will not say, not to their daughters, not to anyone. Whatever they did on Thursday afternoons in 1957 belongs to them. It was the one thing in their entire lives that did. Somewhere right now, there is a hat box on a closet shelf in a house being cleaned out by strangers. Nobody opens it. The estate sale ticket says $5. Every trick in that playbook was designed to protect a secret. But not every secret was a betrayal. Some couples found ways to protect each other, and the methods they used to keep a marriage breathing were just as invisible and just as deliberate. The same silence that once hid an affair could just as easily hide an act of devotion. Number 15. The Sunday drive to nowhere. Every Sunday after dinner, couples got in the car and drove. No destination, no errand, no reason except to be together in a moving vehicle with the windows down. A Chevrolet Bel Air or a Ford Fairlane, whatever was parked in the driveway. 2-lane county roads, not the highway. The AM radio turned low or switched off entirely. Her hand resting on the bench seat between them. His arm stretched along the seat back behind her shoulders. Gas cost 27 cents a gallon in 1955. A Sunday drive ran less than a dime. The smell of cut hay drifting through the open window. Cows standing at the fence line, watching the car roll past. A church steeple visible 3 towns over in the flat light. The road curving past a farmhouse with laundry still on the line. Sometimes the children rode in the back, but often it was just the 2 of them, after church, after the dishes were done. The car was the last truly private room in their lives. No telephone ringing, no television playing, no neighbors stopping by, no children pulling at a sleeve. Conversation happened because there was nothing else to do. The road unspooled, and so did the words they had been saving all week. The car did not need a destination. The destination was each other. But the Sunday drive only worked once a week. The real glue showed up every other evening, and it started on Friday night with a stack of envelopes and a pencil. Number 14. The envelope budget system. On payday, couples sat together at the kitchen table and divided the cash into labeled envelopes: groceries, rent, gas, church, and savings. When an envelope was empty, the spending stopped. Friday evening under the ceiling light, his pay envelope torn open and smoothed flat on the formica. Craft paper envelopes labeled in pencil, real bills counted by hand, and sorted into piles. Coins stacked in small towers, both of them sitting right across from each other, both seeing every single dollar. No credit card, no separate account, no hidden purchase. The Sears Roebuck bill paid first, then the electric company, then the milk money for the children. Whatever was left went into the envelope marked savings and got tucked in the back of the drawer. Financial secrecy was nearly impossible when every dollar had a name written on it in pencil. The system forced partnership. It forced honesty. Today, the average American household carries over $10,000 in credit card debt. Those couples carried envelopes. They did not need a financial advisor. They needed a kitchen table and a pencil. Number 13. The front porch, after supper. After the dishes were washed and the children sent outside to play, couples sat on the front porch together. That was the evening. The metal glider swing with the chipped green paint. 2 aluminum lawn chairs angled toward the street. A glass of iced tea sweating in the heat. Maybe a bottle of beer. Maybe nothing at all. Crickets starting up in the grass. Fireflies blinking low over the yard after dark. The neighbor's sprinkler ticking back and forth across the sidewalk, waving at the Hendersons across the street, watching cars drift past, slow enough to recognize the driver. His cigarette glowing faint in the near dark, her feet tucked beneath her on the cushion. Neither one in a hurry to go inside, the sky going from blue to orange to violet while they sat perfectly still. No air conditioning pulling them inside. The porch was cooler than the house in July. This was not entertainment. This was decompression together. Being bored in the same place at the same time turned out to be its own kind of intimacy. They did not call it quality time. They called it Tuesday. Number 12. The Saturday night dance. Couples went dancing together at the VFW Hall, the Elks Lodge, the Knights of Columbus, or the American Legion. A live band on a small stage, a waxed floor, his hand on her waist. Admission was 50 cents to $1 per couple, a local 4-piece band, saxophone, piano, stand-up bass, drums. His good shoes polished that afternoon. Her best dress pressed and hanging on the bedroom door since morning. The foxtrot, the waltz, the two-step, the slow dance where her cheek pressed against his collar and neither one spoke. A paper cup of punch from the long table by the wall. The drive home afterward with the radio off and the warmth still between them. Dancing required physical contact, eye contact, moving in rhythm with another human being. That is not a metaphor. That is the literal mechanics of trust, practiced on a wooden floor every Saturday night. The whole town watched him hold his wife. The marriage was public. The commitment was visible. He did not take her dancing because he liked to dance. He took her because she liked to be held. Number 11. The Couples Bowling League. But it was not just the Saturday nights that built lasting marriages. Some of the most lasting bonds in America were forged in the noisiest, cheapest rooms in town. Husband and wife teams bowled together in weekly leagues at the local alley. Same night every week, same lanes, same opponents, same pitcher of beer on the scoring table. A game cost about 25 cents in the 1950s. Bowling was the working man's country club, open to anyone who could lace up a rented pair of shoes. The crash of pins echoed under a low ceiling. Cigarette smoke drifted through fluorescent light. Pabst Blue Ribbon or Schlitz from the bar. Pretzels in a paper bowl. Team shirts with names stitched on the pocket. They were on the same team. Literally. Working toward the same score on the same sheet every single week. At its peak, tens of millions of Americans bowled in organized leagues. Today, league participation has collapsed by more than 90% from its mid-century highs. You did not cancel for a headache. You did not skip because you were tired. They had a standing appointment every Thursday for 30 years. Nobody called it date night, they called it league. 5 habits, a Sunday drive, a stack of envelopes, a porch swing, a dance floor, a bowling lane. Everyone required the exact same thing: being in the same room, not the same house. The same room, the same car, the same porch, the same waxed floor. Proximity was not the byproduct of those marriages. Proximity was the strategy. Today, some studies suggest that many modern couples spend less than 20 minutes of uninterrupted, quality time together on an average day. Those couples could not have imagined that number. They would not have believed it. Number 10. The drive-in movie. Couples went to the drive-in theater every week or every other week. It was the cheapest and most private date in mid-century America. $1 per carload on bargain nights, sometimes 50 cents for a double feature. At their peak in the late 1950s, over 4,000 drive-in theaters dotted the American landscape. The metal speaker hooked on the half-rolled window, a wool blanket across her lap, popcorn from the snack bar in a wax paper bag, his arm around her shoulders before the opening credits finished. The screen glowing white against the dark tree line at the far edge of the lot. Kids in pajamas asleep in the back seat by the second feature. The smell of bug spray and buttered popcorn in the summer air. It was cheap enough to repeat every single week. That was the point. Consistency, not extravagance. Today, fewer than 300 drive-ins remain in the entire country. $1 and a dark parking lot. That was a date. And it was enough. Number 9. The note in the lunchbox. Wives slipped a small handwritten note into their husband's lunch pail before he walked out the door. A few words on a scrap of paper folded between the wax paper and the thermos. A torn piece of lined notebook paper, or the back of a grocery receipt, written with a ballpoint pen, a Bic, or a Papermate. 5 words, maybe 10. Pork chops tonight. Miss you. The kid said hi. Come home safe. Found at noon in a factory break room, on a loading dock in a machine shop somewhere across town. Read once, folded, tucked into a shirt pocket. Some men saved every single one. A shoebox in the back of the closet found by the children only after the funeral. It cost nothing. It took 30 seconds. It meant one thing. I thought of you before you were awake. A woman's handwriting on a torn scrap of paper. That was the original text message, and it carried more weight than anything glowing on a screen ever will. The lunchbox note was a whisper sent into the middle of the day, but the real anchor happened at the same hour every single evening. Number 8. Never eating supper apart. The family ate supper together every night, at the table, all of them seated. This was not negotiable. The table set before he came through the door. Melmac plates or plain white stoneware, meat and potatoes, a vegetable from a can, bread and butter on a saucer in the center. Grace spoken aloud in many homes. Everyone seated before the first fork was lifted. The television off or not yet owned. No radio at the table. Talk about school, about the shop, about the neighbor's new fence. Dinner at 6 o'clock, not 5:30, not 6:15, 6. Today, fewer than 30% of American families eat dinner together on any given night. In the 1950s, it was nearly universal. The table was the only place where every member of the household stopped moving at the same time. You could not sit across from the same person every evening for 40 years and remain a stranger. The table was not furniture. It was an appointment they kept every night for the life of the marriage. Number 7. The shared morning coffee before anyone else woke. Couples set the alarm early and sat together at the kitchen table with coffee. 15 minutes, sometimes 30, just the two of them before the day had a chance to begin. The Folgers percolator bubbling on the stove, or Maxwell House in the drip pot. A pound of coffee cost about 79 cents, 5:30 in the morning. The kitchen still dark except for the light over the stove. 2 cups on the table. The clink of a spoon against ceramic. The hiss of the percolator finishing its cycle. A quiet that did not exist at any other hour in that house. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they did not. Both counted. They gave the first minutes of every day to each other, before the children, before the job, before the world outside that kitchen door had a claim on either one of them. They chose each other first, every single morning. Nobody told them to. Nobody had to. Number 6. Fighting only behind closed doors. When they fought, and they did fight, they walked into the bedroom and pulled the door shut. The children never heard the words. The neighbors never knew it happened. The door closed firmly. Voices dropped to an urgent whisper. The children on the other side of the wall heard nothing, or maybe the faint hum of grown-up conversation, too low to follow. When the door opened again, both of them were composed. He took out the trash. She finished the ironing. The kitchen went back to normal. Nobody mentioned it. No calling her mother to report the details. No telling the man next door over the back fence. No public confession of private grief. The marriage was protected in public. Always. Conflict existed, and it was real, but it was contained, private, handled between the only two people it involved. Dignity was the rule nobody had to write down. You could be angry, you could not be undignified. They did not call it emotional regulation. They called it manners. None of these habits cost money. Not one. The Sunday drive cost a dime. The morning coffee cost pennies. The lunchbox note cost nothing at all. Today, the average couple spends well over $200 a month on date nights, streaming subscriptions, and relationship apps. The couples therapy industry employs over 125,000 licensed professionals in this country alone, and nearly half of all first marriages still end in divorce. In 1950, fewer than 1 in 5 did. Those couples never read a single book about love languages. They never scheduled a communication workshop. They showed up every day, in the same room, at the same table, at the same hour. That was the investment. And it paid dividends no professional has ever matched. Number 5, the fix it together. Saturday, when something in the house broke, they fixed it together. When something needed building, they built it side by side. Saturday morning at the Ace Hardware on Main Street, or the Sears catalog spread open on the kitchen table, both of them pointing at the same page. Sears Craftsman Tools, bought once and guaranteed for life. Painting a room together, one rolling the walls while the other cut in at the edges. He held the ladder. She handed up the gutter brackets. Wallpaper hung in the bathroom past midnight because they started too late and refused to quit with the job half done. The smell of sawdust, turpentine on a rag. Fresh paint drying with the windows cracked. They built the life together. Literally, the fence, the bookshelf, the addition off the back of the kitchen. Nothing was thrown away if it could be saved. Not the toaster that could be rewired, not the chair with the loose leg, not the marriage. They did not hire someone. They did not replace it. They fixed it together. That was not a home improvement philosophy. That was a marriage philosophy. Number 4, church together every Sunday morning. Couples attended services together every week. Same pew, same hymnal, same handshake with the pastor at the door on the way out. His one good suit pressed the night before. Her hat and gloves laid out on the dresser since dawn. The children scrubbed and silent in the back seat. The hymnal held open between husband and wife, her soprano and his baritone, neither one a gifted singer. The slow walk to the car afterward. The drive home with the windows down. the children out of their church clothes before the car engine cooled, the pot roast already in the oven from early morning, filling the house when they came through the front door. They shared a moral framework, a weekly reset, a public declaration that they believed in something larger than the argument from Wednesday night. The community saw them together every week without fail. That visibility was its own kind of accountability. Sunday morning was not only about faith, it was about rhythm, the same place, the same hour, the same commitment, made visible 52 times a year. Number 3, the same booth every anniversary. Couples went back to the same restaurant on the same date every single year. Some returned to the place from their very first date. The location never changed. That was the whole point. A steak dinner for two cost about $3.50 in 1955. The waitress knew their names by year 5, and she had their water poured before they sat down. Her good dress, the one saved for occasions. His tie pulled from the back of the closet. The children left with her sister for the evening. The same table by the window, the same bread basket, the same view of the parking lot where he once opened the car door for her on a night when neither of them knew what the next 50 years would look like. The menu prices climbed every year. The booth never moved. Repetition was the ritual. The sameness was the message. I would choose this again, this table, this restaurant, this person across from me. They did not need a new experience. They needed the same one, and that was the proof. Number 2, the goodnight kiss without exception. Every night before sleep, they kissed each other goodnight after an argument, in total silence, when neither one felt like it, every single night. The click of the bedside lamp, the house gone dark, the furnace humming low in the basement. A brief kiss, not passionate, not performed for anyone watching, just deliberate, after the worst fights, after the longest shifts at the plant, after the phone call with the bad news. After burying his mother on a Tuesday and coming home to a house that felt too quiet. She kissed him anyway. He kissed her back. The mattress shifting as they turned to their own sides, the quilt pulled to the shoulder, the street light cutting a thin line across the ceiling through the curtain gap. The kiss was not affection. It was a decision, a nightly vote that the marriage was still chosen, still standing, still worth one small gesture before sleep took them both. Some nights it was the only kind thing between them all day. It was enough. The last thing they did every day was choose each other. That was not a habit. That was a vow renewed in the dark without a single word. 15 things. Not one of them was complicated. Not one was expensive. Not one required a professional to explain. And the generation that practiced them stayed married longer than any generation that followed. The numbers are not ambiguous. Something specific was lost, and nothing that replaced it has come close. Number 1, the kitchen table. After the children were in bed, after the children fell asleep, they sat down at the kitchen table. 2 cups of coffee, the house finally quiet, and they talked. 10 o'clock at night. Every bedroom door down the hallway pulled shut. The house still for the first time since dawn. The percolator reheated on the back burner, or a pot of tea steeping under a folded towel. 2 cups on the formica. The clock on the wall ticking loud enough to count. The refrigerator humming in the corner. The occasional creak of the house settling into the cold. They talked about money, about the children, about the brother who was drinking again, about the promotion that did not come through, about the baby they were hoping for, about the one they lost in April and never mentioned in front of anyone else. No one heard these conversations, not the children, not the neighbors, not the minister, not a single living soul. The kitchen light was the only one on in the whole house, From the street, it was just a yellow square glowing in a dark window. This is where the marriage actually lived. Not at the altar, not in the photograph on the mantel, not in the anniversary card signed once a year. At the kitchen table, after everyone else was asleep, in the quiet conversation nobody else would ever hear. Every hard decision was made at that table. Every fear was admitted there. Every plan was drawn on the back of an envelope nobody thought to save. A kitchen table, 2 cups, a closed door, and the sound of a clock. That was the entire infrastructure of a marriage that lasted 50 years. No one could package it, no one could sell it, and no one, it turns out, could replace it. Somewhere tonight, on a street you have driven past 1,000 times, someone's grandmother is sitting at that kitchen table. 2 cups set out, the coffee still warm. The chair across from her is empty now, but she still sits there, because that was their time. And the habits that mattered most do not break just because the other chair is empty. Every segment you just watched describes a different room inside the same locked house. The bank book trapped her in it. The unspoken deal furnished it. The coping methods and the survival tactics and the affairs and the strategies couples used to stay together were all built by people who could not afford to say what was true out loud. What connects all of it is not nostalgia for a simpler time. It is the recognition that an entire generation navigated marriage with an emotional precision that had no name and no manual and no permission to exist. The words were never missing. They were confiscated. By banks that required his signature on her identity. By churches that called silence a virtue. By neighbors who punished honesty faster than cruelty. A generation of husbands and wives built an entire language out of everything they were forbidden to say. The silence was never voluntary.